The rise and fall of Muammar Gaddafi. Muammar Gaddafi, the enigmatic leader of Libya for over 4 decades, was a figure who evoked both awe and fear on the global stage. His rise to power was marked by revolutionary fervor and grand ambitions, yet his eventual downfall would be a cautionary tale of unchecked authority and international intervention. Rise to power. Gaddafi's journey to power began in 1969 when, as a young military officer, he led a bloodless coup against King Idris I, Libya's monarch at the time. Gaddafi, then only 27 years old, swiftly consolidated his control over the country, establishing himself as the de facto ruler. His charismatic persona and revolutionary rhetoric resonated with many Libyans, particularly the disenfranchised youth and the urban poor, who saw him as a champion of Arab nationalism and anti-colonialism. During his early years in power, Gaddafi implemented sweeping socialist reforms, nationalizing industries and redistributing wealth. He also sought to assert Libya's independence from Western powers, expelling foreign military bases and promoting Pan-African and Pan-Arab solidarity. These efforts garnered him support, not only domestically, but also among various revolutionary movements across the globe. Peak of power. Gaddafi's reign reached its zenith in the 1970s and 1980s, when Libya emerged as a significant player in regional and international affairs. He used Libya's vast oil wealth to fund ambitious projects at home and abroad, from infrastructure development to support for liberation movements in Africa and the Middle East. Gaddafi's confrontational stance towards the West, epitomized by his support for anti-imperialist causes and his pursuit of nuclear capabilities, earned him both admiration and condemnation on the world stage. Despite facing numerous challenges, including internal dissent and external conflicts, Gaddafi managed to maintain a firm grip on power through a combination of repression and co-optation. His regime cultivated a cult of personality around him, portraying him as the brother leader and the sole guarantor of Libya's stability and prosperity. The downfall. The beginning of the end for Gaddafi came with the Arab Spring in 2011, a wave of popular uprisings that swept across the Middle East and North Africa. Inspired by the success of protests in neighboring countries, Libyans took to the streets to demand political reforms and greater freedoms. Gaddafi's response was swift and brutal, unleashing his security forces to crush the dissent with lethal force. However, what began as a crackdown on protesters soon escalated into a full-blown civil war, with opposition forces gaining ground and international condemnation mounting against Gaddafi's regime. The United Nations, backed by NATO allies, intervened militarily in support of the rebels, launching airstrikes and imposing sanctions to hasten Gaddafi's downfall. After months of fierce fighting, Gaddafi's forces were eventually defeated, and he found himself cornered in his hometown of Sirte. In October 2011, Gaddafi was captured by rebel forces and subjected to brutal treatment before being summarily executed, marking the ignominious end of his rule. Legacy. The legacy of Muammar Gaddafi remains deeply contested. For some, he is remembered as a revolutionary hero who defied Western hegemony and championed the cause of the oppressed. Others see him as a tyrant whose autocratic rule and human rights abuses stained Libya's history and set the stage for years of instability and chaos. In the years following Gaddafi's demise, Libya descended into a protracted and bloody civil conflict, characterized by rival militias, political fragmentation, and the proliferation of extremist groups. The country became a battleground for regional powers vying for influence, exacerbating the humanitarian crisis and hindering efforts to rebuild a functioning state. Muammar Gaddafi's rise to power and subsequent downfall encapsulate the complexities of leadership, the seduction of absolute authority, and the perils of overreaching ambition. His story serves as a cautionary tale of the dangers of unchecked power and the enduring legacy of authoritarianism in the modern world.